They say the new incoming Republican House that was just voted on by the American people, that they must be compelled to comply with what the past Congress did when the Democrats controlled the House and, of course, the Senate as they do now. And they are demanding that the Republicans increase the debt ceiling up to here. And they will not negotiate. We have a massive debt. We have a debt that's bigger than the entire economy. Our economy now produces over $18 trillion in wealth. Our debt is $31.6 trillion. That's on books. If you count Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA debt, it's closer to $350 trillion. Unimaginable. What comes after trillion? I don't even know. Everyone's going to Google. Oh, I know. But I don't know. And that's not the point of the program. So how do we allow this to happen? Well, you and I don't want it to happen. But as a people, we allow it to happen because the burden of debt isn't felt. It's felt in your own life when you have a mortgage payment and you see the interest you have to pay, or when you have a credit card that has interest at 24.9%, that gets your attention. But when the government deficit spends each year, the deficit is a yearly matter. The overall debt is the accumulation, the aggregation of all the deficits over the various years. Well, you're not paying for it in any way that you feel. Interest on the debt is enormous. We pay for it through our taxes and more borrowing. But they don't tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, pal, we need $4,312 for your portion of the debt. It's actually much larger than that, just so you know. So you don't feel it directly. And so you don't, for most Americans, not you, you don't have a problem with it. People keep talking about the debt. It goes in one ear, out the other. It goes over your head. You don't care. Oh, the debt. Nothing's happened yet. So the whole system has to collapse to be proven right. That is, that the laws of economics are just as legitimate as the laws of physics. Just because people pass statutes doesn't change them. I got to thinking about this. I wrote an entire book about this, Plunder and Deceit. Big government's exploitation of young people in the future, because it's younger people who are going to really suffer from this. Now, we suffer from it in the form of inflation, and I'll discuss that in sort of an endnote form a little bit later. But this massive spending in printing is what causes inflation, nothing else. Government causes inflation. Government causes recessions. Government causes depressions. Government causes the price of food to go up. Government causes the price of electricity, coal, and oil, and natural gas to go up. Nobody else does it. The market is the market. It just works. But government is incompetent. It's filled with bureaucrats. They're not there because they're smart or they're experts. They're there because they got jobs. They're in the civil service. They're unionized, and you can't get rid of them. That's why they're there. And they make all kinds of decisions about your life. But the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, but especially the Democrat Party, they live off of debt. Actually, they live off of two things, racism and debt. And so I remember when I wrote this book, I was very, very troubled. I thought it might make a difference. It's made no difference at all when it comes to debt. So I said in chapter 2 on the debt, George Mason University economics professor Dr. Walter Williams, who was a genius, who was understandable, who wrote brilliant books and columns, and who passed away a few years back. Here's what he said. He described rightly the underlying pathology driving the nation to economic and financial ruin as a moral problem. As a moral problem. He said, we've become an immoral people, demanding that Congress forcibly use one American to serve the purposes of another. Deficits and runaway national debt are merely symptoms of the real problem. And as Williams states, nearly 75% of today's federal spending can be described as Congress taking the earnings of one American to give to another through thousands of handout programs, such as farm subsidies, business bailouts, and welfare. Walter Williams. He was our absolute first guest on Life, Liberty, and Levin.
There's a temptation among all humans to want to live at the expense of somebody else. That is, the American people, and it's sad to say this, is that the American people love to live at the expense of somebody else. That is, whether it be farmers, they want the farm subsidies, poor people, food stamps, businesses, business bailouts. So if let's say in the case of a farmer, is the farmer's having trouble, and if he comes and puts a gun to me and say, give me your money, he's going to go to jail. But if he goes to Washington and gets a congressman to write a law enabling the IRS to take my money, he doesn't go to jail. So what people like to use government to do things that if they did the same thing, they would go to jail. So what I'm saying is that people like to use the government to legalize theft.
The great Thomas Sowell, who we've had on this program, senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, Stanford University, he says, there was a time when the purpose of taxes was to pay the inevitable cost of government. And everybody understands, government in its proper role needs to be funded. But that's not what we're talking about today. He says, to the political left, however, taxes have long been seen as a way to redistribute income and finance other social experiments based on liberal ideology. Well, it is a disaster. And the rhinos have gone along with it. The last massive spending bill was passed in November. Right before the Republicans were sworn in the House after the November election on the first Tuesday in November, where they would take over the majority of the House. So the lame duck Democrats in the House of Representatives under Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the Senate that had a bare majority, with the assistance of the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, and 17 or 18 of his colleagues, quickly passed a massive spending bill. Massive. That used the COVID monies that were supposed to be one-time monies in the baseline, blew the ceiling off the debt, and created all these climate change programs, massive redistribution of wealth programs, funded all these massive programs that already existed, expanded them. We've never seen anything like it. And so they passed it. Now, the budget bill can only take effect if there's money to pay for it. While the debt ceiling was not high enough to cover that budget. So they quickly passed it knowing that the more conservative Republican majority in the House of Representatives would have to raise the debt right to the penny to pay for all the new spending. So let me try it this way. They passed a budget that goes up here while the debt ceiling is down here. So something has to give. Either that budget that the lame duck Congress, both in the Senate and the House, frankly, both lame duck, that they passed, they say the new incoming Republican House that was just voted on by the American people, that they must be compelled to comply with what the past Congress did when the Democrats controlled the House and, of course, the Senate as they do now. And they are demanding that the Republicans increase the debt ceiling up to here. And they will not negotiate. Then on top of that comes Joe Biden. Joe Biden says, we have a budget too. It's a $7 trillion budget with a built-in $1.2 trillion deficit. And he says, I want that passed. That's up here. The debt ceiling is here. On February 1st, the Speaker of the House had his first conversation with Joe Biden. Biden agreed to meet with the Speaker soon. Since then, the Speaker of the House has told me on my radio show, has told anyone who will listen in various press conferences, that Joe Biden will not return his phone call. Joe Biden is playing chicken with the debt. He's playing chicken with the budget. He's playing chicken with the economy. But you know how good their propaganda is and how the media regurgitate it. So Biden and Schumer and the Democrats are now blaming McCarthy and the Republicans for anything that might occur if they don't meet the deadline. They're saying just pass a smooth, a clean debt ceiling bill. Stop playing games. Stop playing games. So they reverse the entire narrative that it's the House Republicans who are playing games because they won't pay for everything that Biden is now demanding on top of what the lame duck Congress did. Is that why you voted for these people? So they just rubber stamp everything? So this is the battle that's taking place right now.
Want to see more? Sign up for Levin TV.